Welcome to the Daily Insider here on VegasInsider.com. I am Kevin Rogers for Friday, February 19, 2021. And a lot to go over for the NBA and college basketball, looking back at last night and then looking ahead to tonight. As you see our homepage here at VegasInsider.com, Bulls and 76ers, the first game on ESPN, the Jazz Clippers coming up a little bit later on. That we'll get to in just a few minutes. Let's first look back at last night's NBA, as only 3 games inside of the association. And Brooklyn winning at Staples Center, beating the Lakers 109-98. Huge first half for the Nets. They dropped 64 on the Lakers. Didn't get a great offensive game from Kyrie Irving. Joe Harris was big from three-point range. James Harden was good. But Brooklyn, look at this blowout, though, of the LA Lakers last night. They're up 13, or actually up 11 at the half, and they just cruise 109-98. They win as 3-point underdogs. Game easily stays under the total of 230. And this total, I think, opened around 234, 235 and dropped. But the Nets now 4-0 so far on their current road trip, winning at Golden State, Sacramento, Phoenix, and then beating the Lakers last night. And they get the Clippers coming up on Sunday. So Brooklyn trying to get a perfect road trip. And this coming off of, think about this. They lose these 2 games at Philly and at Detroit. I know at Philadelphia they had everybody out. But even losing at Detroit's pretty inexcusable. But the Nets have stepped it up, and they're playing very well at the right time. And even looking at these games, the Clippers, you don't know if Kawhi is going to play. We don't know if Kawhi is going to play tonight against the Jazz. But Sacramento, Orlando, and Dallas, then San Antonio and Houston, the Nets should win all those games. And for the Lakers, they have not been good to back at home this year. They barely covered against Memphis. They lost the 2 games in overtime, or let me rephrase that. They failed to cover in the 2 games in overtime against Oklahoma City, failed to cover against Detroit, did beat Denver, but lost to Golden State, did beat New Orleans, lost to San Antonio, barely beat Chicago, lost to Portland, losing to Brooklyn last night. And yeah, this team is missing Anthony Davis. We know that. And LeBron can only do so much, just like every other time in LeBron's career can he only do so much. So the Nets end up picking up a victory in that in that game at LA. They got the Clippers coming up in just a few days. Toronto and Milwaukee, they played the second leg of that 3-game set at Fiserv Forum. And the Raptors, look at that, blow out the Bucks, 110-96, just completely in control of this game, up by 17 at halftime. And the Bucks offensively, you don't normally see 96 points scored by them, but 5 consecutive losses for Milwaukee. They're 0-5 against the spread in this span, and they continue a homestand in which they got a couple teams coming up that they need to blow out. And they just lost to Oklahoma City. We'll get to that in a second because they play them again tonight. But Milwaukee, 5 consecutive losses, and Toronto cannot take anything away from them, as after they lost to Minnesota back on Sunday, to go to Milwaukee and win 2, that's very impressive. Now it's just about Toronto trying to build a winning streak. They've had a lot of 2, 3-game winning streaks this year, and they've made up ground after a slow start. But now the Raptors really got to get it together. And after Minnesota tonight, Philly twice at home. That'll be a big test for them coming up. The Heat, they bounce back from their loss to Golden State in overtime. They win at Sacramento 118-110. So the Heat snap a 3-game skid. Sacramento had covered 8 consecutive games. They have lost 5 in a row, all coming at home. So an 0-5 homestand for the Kings. Pretty inexcusable for them. And when you look at defensively how bad they were, they put up 110, at least 110 in every game, but also they gave up at least 118 in every game. And now you get the Bulls and Bucks in a back-to-back, then go to Brooklyn. So it doesn't get any easier for the Sacramento Kings coming up. Now looking at Friday, and another loaded card in the NBA, Golden State at Orlando leads things off in the association. And You see a lot of the money is on Golden State going into tonight. Now, I want to put this out there about the Orlando Magic. They're 11-18, and they're dealing with injuries. Aaron Gordon's out. Cole Anthony is out. The Magic have not beaten one team this season that's currently above 500. They have 11 wins against teams with losing records. And Golden State's not, it's not overwhelming with their records at 16-13, but 11 wins against teams with losing records. They're 3-8 against the spread against teams with winning records. Now, one of those covers came against Golden State last week. The Warriors had to come back to beat the Magic back on February 11th, 111-105, did not cover as 8.5-point favorites. But still, when you look at the Magic and you see that the Warriors have won 4 of their past 5, that Orlando so up and down off a win, they just beat the Knicks, lost by 19 at Phoenix, lost by 26 to Chicago, lost by 14 to Sacramento, lost this game in overtime to Indiana by 2, and they got the doors blown off at Houston. So Orlando really has not done a good job of capitalizing off a win, and we'll see how the Warriors do now going east. Chicago's at Philadelphia, and the 76ers barely beat the Rockets a few nights ago. They were up 26.5. They only won by 5, laying 8. Now they get the Bulls, and then, as I mentioned before, they get Toronto for a pair of games. But the 76ers snapped a 3-game skid. They should get Ben Simmons back tonight. He was out in the Houston game due to a stomach bug. Chicago, they're off a really good win against Detroit. You say a good win against Detroit. They were down 25 in that game, and they came back and won by 3. So the Bulls will take it. They've won 3 of 4. First time they're facing the Sixers this season. And the Bulls, as a road underdog, a substantial road underdog this season, they covered against the Clippers, covered against the Lakers, covered against the Kings, beat the Blazers. The only really bad showing was at Milwaukee, and they won a couple at Washington. Again, that was early on when we thought the Wizards were better than they really were. But the Bulls have been good as this kind of underdog this year, so keep an eye on that for tonight. Boston and Atlanta, second game they're playing in 3 nights, and the Celtics played without Kemba Walker the other night. He should be back tonight, and Atlanta beat Boston 122-114 back on Wednesday. That was on the heels of the Celtics beating the Nuggets the night before. So you had to expect Boston to have a bit of a letdown the next night against an Atlanta team that really was not playing well. Atlanta's not good defensively, as they had dropped 4 straight. And you look at the numbers, what they had given up, 118 to the Mavs, and they blew that game to Dallas. 125 to San Antonio. They were down huge in that game. Lost to Indiana. And then the Knicks, they actually were down big early, came back, took a 7-point lead in the third, and then the Knicks pulled away in that game. I mean, you give 123 to the Knicks, that's pretty telling. But good effort by them beating the Celtics. Now they get the Celtics once again, so I guess just take the over with Atlanta. Totals 225.5. Detroit and Memphis, the Pistons off that big blown lead the other night against the Bulls. The Grizzlies, very up and down. You see what they've done recently. Lost to the Raptors, beat Charlotte, lost to the Lakers, beat the Kings, lost to the Pelicans, beat the Thunder, and that was a game that was pretty close going to the fourth quarter. So the Grizzlies really needed that win, but you see the road's not going to be easy for them coming up after Detroit. They get Phoenix at home, who they actually beat back on MLK Day. Going to Dallas, Clippers twice. So that's a little bit of a rough stretch there for the Memphis Grizzlies. The Bucks, I don't know what to say about them right now. 5 straight losses, all straight up and against the spread. This loss here to Oklahoma City, 114-109, you're laying 12, and you lose that game to the Thunder. The Thunder are obviously a rebuilding team. I don't like when people say this is a bad team. They're a rebuilding team. They have a first-year head coach. They got rid of all of their big players over the years, the last being Chris Paul, most recently going to the Suns, but we know who they had in years past. But this is a team that the Milwaukee Bucks, who, I mean, when you go back, Giannis had a shot at the buzzer in this game. They lost to Phoenix. Utah really took care of them. And then you lose twice by double digits to Toronto, who's a good team. I mean, they're not what they were. They're still a playoff team in the East, but that's not good. I mean, you can't lose these games like that. And Milwaukee has got a lot of very winnable games coming up. And Oklahoma City actually had a 4-game ATS hot streak before losing the last 2 to Portland, in which the Blazers were up 24. Thunder came back, took the lead, and the Thunder then were hanging around with Memphis. So you had the Oklahoma City Thunder covering 4 straight. Now they've gone backwards, and we'll see what they do here. Second game against Milwaukee in less than a week. Denver and Cleveland, we're going to skip down to them and then go back. Denver and Cleveland is a makeup game. Well, I shouldn't say a makeup game. It's a rescheduled game because of the snowstorm issues in the middle of the country, COVID issues with some of these teams. So Denver and Cleveland meeting up for the second time in a few days. They just played actually 9 days ago in Denver, and the Nuggets won 133-95. And now the Nuggets trying to pick up a win on their road trip, already lost the first 2 to Boston and Washington. And Cleveland, I mean, talk about unmitigated disasters. This was a team that took 2 from Brooklyn just last month. And now look at what they've done. All these losses, and for the most part, just getting blown out. Double digit. Lost by 6. They hung with Phoenix. Chris Paul didn't play that game. Double digit. So this Cleveland team, and look at all the losses there. They can't cover either. So they're not competing, and they're not covering. Now, Toronto is interesting tonight because they are 0-4 with no rest, coming off the victory over Milwaukee last night. So now you go to Minnesota in a revenge spot. Who would have thought you'd say a revenge spot against the Timberwolves? But that's the case here, where Minnesota beat Toronto down in Tampa 116-112 back on Sunday night. And the Timberwolves, off of back-to-back home losses to the Lakers and the Pacers, they were competitive in both those games. But this stretch here, they have 1 win. They came against Toronto. So there's got to be a little bit of confidence there, you would think, for Minnesota, and that's a short spread. Toronto's laying 2.5. Jazz and Clippers tonight. Utah laying 4.5 at Staples Center. Still no word if Kawhi Leonard's going to play. Paul George is going to be out. Mike Conley's going to be out for the Jazz. Utah 20-1 in their last 21 games. I mean, all those wins. The only loss came to Denver back at the end of January. But they took care of the Clippers. They were trailing the Clippers at the half. Came back and had a huge second half against L.A. And I mentioned this yesterday for Utah, that game right there next week. Jazz and Lakers. Should be very interesting in Salt Lake City. But the Clippers, though, coming off of that loss to Utah, and you see where the money's going. Jazz are 23-5, playing very good basketball right now. So that is what's going on in the NBA for tonight. Very busy card in the NBA. College basketball, let's look back at last night. Ohio State, they pulled away from Penn State 92-82, so good win for the Buckeyes on the road at Penn State. Last time they played Penn State, they won by 4, so they end up with the win last night. And last time the Buckeyes lost was to Purdue last month. So really, the Buckeyes, I mean, you have Ohio State and Michigan, all right, as the class right now of the Big Ten. Ohio State and Michigan. And Michigan beat Rutgers last night. And Ohio State will end up, there we are. Michigan won. They did not cover against Rutgers. They get Ohio State Sunday in Columbus. So huge game. And Michigan State ends up beating Rutgers last night 71-64. Just 1 loss in the season for the Wolverines. And they don't cover as 9.5-point dog or 9.5-point favorites last night in Ann Arbor. Now looking at the rest of college basketball, the big upset last night, good win for Wichita State as they beat Houston 68-63. If you caught the end of this game, Wichita State was up most of the second half. They were up 64-63, if I got my math right. I think it was 64-63. They miss a shot or turn the ball over. Houston got it. And they take it up the court thinking, okay, maybe they'll tie it here. And it turns out that the pass gets intercepted. Wichita State takes it. Guy goes up for the layup, and he gets just decked. And it was an intentional foul, but it was kind of like we got to foul him. And it just was a little over the top. 2 free throws and the ball. So they got 4 points there. So instead of it being 64-63 Houston ball, maybe a chance to take the lead or go to overtime, they turn it over in transition, and Wichita State gets 4 points, and they win by 5. So that one kind of had an interesting swing there at the end of that game. But Houston handed its 3rd AAC loss of the season, and for Wichita State, they've been playing very, very well. And they had the Greg Marshall situation in which he resigned before the season, and a lot of stuff behind the scenes. But for Wichita State, they had not been good against the spread recently, and a lot of those were in the favorite role, but they hung with Houston the first time, losing by 7 on the road, and then the second time they win by 5 as a home dog, and they've been very good in AAC play, so that's a nice win for the Wichita State Shockers. In the Pac-12, UCLA, they end up beating Arizona 74-60. Arizona was up out of the gate like 10-2, and I know that's early, but Arizona has not been good of late covering numbers. They just lost back-to-back now to Oregon and UCLA. They didn't cover against Oregon State. They dropped 4 of 5. UCLA had gone on an 0-7 against the spread run before they beat Arizona last night as a short favorite. In a lot of those games, they were relatively huge favorites. So they really needed that game last night. And UCLA, they end up beating Arizona. And Oregon, they come back to beat Colorado 30-20, or it was 30-25 at the half. They win 60-56. And the Ducks barely cover there as 3-point favorites. That's a revenge spot for Oregon. And a couple of the other late-night Pac-12 games. Washington State, a big blowout of Cal. Second time they beat Cal this year. And Stanford over Washington. So that is, and I forgot about this one too. Sorry, Big Ten. Iowa over Wisconsin, 77-62. So Wisconsin now back-to-back home losses to Michigan and Iowa. That's not good for the Badgers. They've been very inconsistent of late. So the Badgers lose that one. Tonight, you don't have a lot of big-time teams playing. Doesn't mean there aren't games that you can't bet on, but the Horizon League, they wrap up their regular season this weekend. Wright State's one of the co-leaders in the league. They're at Northern Kentucky laying 9. Also Cleveland State, who's tied with Wright State to begin the weekend at 15-3 in Horizon League play. They go to Fort Wayne to take on the Mastodons, and they beat Fort Wayne twice. Think about how long ago this was. They beat Fort Wayne twice at home as a dog, way back when the Horizon schedule began. And now they are the leaders of the conference, and they're only laying 4. And Fort Wayne is second to last in the Horizon League. Now, you have some Sun Belt action, South Alabama and Appalachian State, Troy and Georgia State, also in the Big West. This is not really a matchup anybody's running to see. Cal Poly Slow and Long Beach State. In the Atlantic 10, this is probably the best matchup of the night. St. Louis and Dayton. St. Louis laid 9 to Dayton the last time they played. This was after the Billikens had nearly a 3-week or over a 3-week stretch of not playing due to COVID. And they had a lot of COVID postponements. But in this game, Dayton ended up winning 76-71 at St. Louis. So now the Billikens, who lost their first 2 out of the chute from COVID, as a 9-point favorite to Dayton, as a 12.5-point favorite to LaSalle. And then that's a good win against St. Bonaventure, who's the leader of the conference. And they had a nice revenge spot against LaSalle here. But 4 straight wins for the Billikens. Now you get Dayton, VCU, Richmond. So the Billikens will be tested there the next few games. And Dayton comes into this one as a home dog. And the Flyers see if they can pull off the sweep of the Billikens. And that's the look at college basketball tonight. You have some late night Mountain West games. UNLV, San Jose State. UNLV a huge favorite there. Boise and Utah State. Boise trying to stay unbeaten. They are laying 1.5 there against Utah State, and they will play twice over the next few weeks. The Broncos off back-to-back wins over UNLV. Then they'll get San Diego State twice, so that'll be interesting. Coming up tomorrow in college basketball, since we have a huge slate, Michigan State, Indiana, obviously lines aren't out yet. Michigan State, Indiana in the Big Ten, and the Spartans will see if they avoid another embarrassment. The Big East, UConn and Villanova. Those are always entertaining games when they get together. Villanova off that loss to Creighton last weekend, and now they get UConn. And the Huskies, they are off that win against Providence back a few days ago. And all of a sudden now back-to-back wins for the Huskies after they lost 2 in a row. And they had, they had a little break there. But the Big East they all had issues at some point with COVID. It's just, it's been a little bit of a fractured season there. Kentucky's at Tennessee. That's a 1 o'clock tip-off tomorrow in Knoxville. And Tennessee won at Kentucky back here on February 6th, 82-71. And Tennessee's actually played well of late. After they lost to LSU, they beat South Carolina. And the end for Tennessee, they should win those games. But who knows with them. Missouri trying to snap a 3-game skid. They go to South Carolina, NC State, and Wake. NC State didn't cover the first time against Wake. But we'll see what they do this time around. Notre Dame and Syracuse. Syracuse had their game wiped out against Louisville this week due to COVID issues with Louisville. This is another interesting one. Texas Tech and Kansas. That Texas Tech, you hope they can get out of Texas with all the weather issues. And Texas Tech, they are off a loss last time. I mean, they last played February 9th. That was the game Chris Beard melted down at the end, and that loss to West Virginia, 82-71. Kansas has played better of late. They've won 4 straight. K-State and Iowa State among 3 of the wins, but I guess Kansas will take that. Also in college hoops on Saturday, Illinois, Minnesota. Minnesota 13-1 at home. They've been lousy on the road, but good at home. They get Illinois. Auburn, LSU, the battle of the Tigers. FSU, Pittsburgh. FSU will try to capitalize off that win over Virginia on or earlier this week on Monday, on Big Monday. Seton Hall, Georgetown. Seton Hall, I want to point this out really fast with them. On the road, covered, well, 1 and covered at UConn, 1 and covered at Providence, 1 and covered at DePaul. So as a favorite, they've been good on the road because they have not been covering numbers at home. So we'll see what Seton Hall does. Louisville and North Carolina. Louisville off of the COVID postponement. And North Carolina just played Northeastern because they needed a game. And they just scheduled Northeastern kind of out of the blue, and they won by 20. So North Carolina trying to make some kind of late run to the tournament. I think they may run out of time on this one, but we'll see. Also, the Egg Bowl, the basketball version of the Egg Bowl, Mississippi State and Ole Miss. Ole Miss won the first matchup back at the Hump, 64-46 in January. So Ole Miss really playing well here, as they've won 6 of their past 8. But the 2 losses came on the road against Arkansas and Georgia. So we'll see what the Ole Miss running Rebels do in that one. Also, Virginia Duke. Duke's played well of late. They've won a few in a row. And Gonzaga will try to stay undefeated, which they will. They're playing San Diego. They're not going to lose that game. It just depends on how much they win by. And Arizona State, UCLA, one of the late games in the Pac-12. Cal and Washington, kind of an ugly game. And that's the look at college basketball for this weekend. And quickly, we'll look ahead to the NHL tonight. Just 4 games. Chicago and Carolina. Hurricanes a heavy favorite after they lost to the Panthers in overtime on Wednesday. Panthers head to Detroit. Big favorites there. Panthers right now all alone in first place in the Central Division, and Detroit in last place. They've already played 4 times this season. The Panthers beat them 3 of 4. Edmonton's at Calgary, and the Flames in this one, you see they've been up and down a bit as they played Vancouver several times. Now they get Edmonton for a pair of games. Winnipeg and Vancouver, that one basically a pick-em there, and Vancouver, you saw after they just played Calgary, they both split that. Winnipeg, they have been the definition of up and down. Loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, win. So the Jets have lost just back-to-back games only once this year. And now they get Vancouver, who they lost to at home back on January 30th, 4-1. So that is the look at the NHL. And you can find Friday's best bets on our homepage with our friend Matt Blunt, and he breaks down Blackhawks Hurricanes, his thoughts there. He likes Chicago, and also he likes the under the Edmonton-Calgary game. So you can find Matt Blunt's picks on the Friday best bets. Also, you can hear the Bet and Collect podcast, as well as, Troy Aikman joined Morton Anderson on the Great Dane Nation podcast. So you could find that as well. NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts 253 coming up at Daytona at the road course. And quickly to take a look at that, Chase Elliott, the favorite, which is really not a shock because he performs very well at these road courses. Also, Martin Truex Jr. does as well. And you see Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin in the mix there, Ryan Blaney, who crashed out early at Daytona last week, Joey Logano, who led Daytona going into the final lap, and Michael McDowell, who won Daytona last week. He is 80-1 to win at the O'Reilly Auto Parts 253. And you can find the best bet video with Michael Roberts on our auto racing page at vegasinsider.com. So that is our look at Friday and Saturday and the weekend. And we appreciate you, again, joining us here on the Daily Insider. We had a good first week, and we'll be back with you on Monday at 1 o'clock Eastern to look ahead to Monday's action, look back at the weekend. So we have all of that to look forward to. You can like us and subscribe to us on our YouTube page at Vegas Insider. Also, if you missed any part of this or you joined us late, we will have the replay on our YouTube page. So in case you missed it, you can always watch it again anytime you want. I am Kevin Rogers. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend, and best of luck with